let's analyze what we know up until now. Joining me here is Ambassador Barbara Leaf. She's the former United States Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, and also she's a distinguished diplomatic fellow at Middle East Institute. Ambassador, great to have you here with us on TRT World.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much. Is this the most historic moment when it comes to the ties between Turkey and the United States? Because certainly, as someone who has been covering Donald Trump's interaction with major foreign leaders, the way the interaction unfolded inside the Oval Office, how cordial it was, correct me if I'm wrong, this was perhaps one of the best interactions he has had in the past 1 year with any foreign leader.
Well, I think so, and certainly when you look at the spectrum of issues, both bilateral and foreign policy, that have been friction points, you've seen a lot of that, the rough edges being shaved down, and that's both by events, but obviously by the chemistry of the leaders and by what they have framed as an emerging agreement on how they can handle some of those bilateral frictions.
Ambassador, given today's White House meeting and the strong language that we heard from both leaders about reinforcing ties between Ankara and Washington, how would you characterize the current trajectory of the relationship between the two countries?
I think it's clearly on the up and up. And let's take two of the most important friction points of the last 10 years, but one of them in particular in the last 2 years, and that's Gaza. In the last 10 years, of course, the relationship that the U.S. has fostered with the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish forces in Syria in the northeast corner. And we saw over time in the first administration and more recently in the Biden administration that relationship was a real sore point between Ankara and Washington. But in fact, changes in Damascus since December, since the flight into exile of Bashar al-Assad and the entry into force of a new government, and the attempts by that government, President Ahmed al-Shara, to foster an integration of those forces, that is smoothing out a lot of that friction. And then on Gaza, I think we saw very clearly in New York this week, and Turkey was part of that conversation with Arab states, that the administration believes it is coming to a sort of plan for post-conflict Gaza. If you can solve the post-conflict peace, you can get to an end of the war.
Right, and as far as the YPG and the SDF, which Turkey says are the offshoot of the PKK terrorist organization, are concerned, do you think there's going to be some sort of significant development in that regard? Because we heard a statement from the Turkish president. He's basically calling on those terror forces to respect the agreement that they have basically agreed to, that happened early in March of this year. And as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been support on that initiative, even from Washington.
Look, there was support from the Biden administration from December with the change in government in Damascus. In military channels, in civilian policy channels, we began messaging to the SDF leadership that it was time to turn towards Damascus and thinking about the integration of forces and the future of northeast Syria as part and parcel of a new Syria. Now, it's hard and difficult and complex a task to overcome years of very difficult relations between Kurds and Assad's Syria or Damascus. But that framework agreement is an important start, just as the meeting between President al-Shara and General Mazloum was another step forward. It isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but it's a really important start.
Right. So certainly, because Turkey has been saying that, to Washington in the past years, that you can't use one terrorist organization to fight another one, because the link between the SDF has been acknowledged by even senior U.S. officials in the past.
Two thoughts. One is that Ankara itself is taking a step, and a very decisive step towards dialogue with Öcalan, with that PKK organization. And Öcalan himself is called on the PKK and all of its myriad elements to lay down arms.
And that's part of the terror-free Turkey initiative that was launched by the current government. So, of course, we have seen progress on that regard. Of course, I think it would be beneficial for the whole region if the United States and Turkey join hands in fighting terrorism in the region. Ambassador Leaf, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, John.
Fascinating insights. Great to have you here with us on TRT World.